Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the one stock that I'm watching this week. I'm going to show you why I'm watching it, what I like about it, and where I see it going in the near future. So two interesting things about this stock is that it has a market cap of 12.6 billion, and since September 6th, it's down 35.6%. So a huge pullback opportunity to buy this stock at a great price. Its price to sales is 13.8 times, and they've increased their cash and short-term investments quarter over quarter for the previous year. The number one thing I love about it is that its balance sheet shows a 0 in the debt column, and we've talked about that before, how important it is to have 0 debt or very low debt in companies that we're considering for a buy. And net revenue was up over last quarter, 250 million in quarter two. So stick around and I'll tell you which stock this is. So the stock we're talking about this morning is Roku. Now, we mentioned Roku is down 35.6% since September 6th when it reached its high in the upper 160s. It had a couple really big down days, and I'm going to get into why it had down days. And then after I discuss a few of these points, we're going to jump into the charts and I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like day by day on the daily time frame. So Roku's had an amazing run. It's up huge, and recently Apple came out with their streaming, their Apple TV Plus streaming, and that caused Roku to have a really big down day. It also had a big effect on Netflix as well. But the one thing about the Apple TV Plus that's interesting that I don't think a lot of people realize is that Apple TV Plus is not exclusive to iOS devices. So it's not just for your Apple TV at home or your iPhone. You can actually stream Apple TV Plus on your Roku device. So I sort of saw that as a little bit of drama that didn't have any weight to it. And as we talked last week about buying stocks that have been beat up, but are beat up for reasons that we don't fully understand. They seem more dramatic and market driven rather than fundamental driven. Roku has a 0 on the balance sheet in the debt column, which is huge. Their revenue is up quarter over quarter since quarter one. And fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with the company. They didn't have a Roku device catch fire. They didn't fire their CEO. There's no big dramatic event or breakdown within the company. It's just the announcement of the Apple TV Plus streaming service, which could be a benefit to Roku because people who already have Roku can now stream Apple TV Plus on their Roku TV or Roku device. Now, moving on from that, Roku had a couple of days where it recovered. Things looked a little better. I was watching it here a little bit just to see what it was going to do, and then it dropped again. Now, the reason for this drop was because of Comcast. Comcast announced their Xfinity Flex streaming service and media player, which has a little more relevance in competition with Roku because their media player is actually a physical device, much like Roku has had in the past. So there can be some direct competition between Comcast, Xfinity Media Player, and Roku. Now they're offering their Comcast Xfinity. Now Comcast is offering their Xfinity. Now Comcast is offering their Xfinity Flex streaming service free to all of their internet-only subscribers. So that's kind of a big deal, but it's a smaller slice of the pie because Comcast has more subscribers, more customers who are on their full plans than on their internet-only plan. So there's a little more relevance, so I can understand a little drop in Netflix and Roku, but such a dramatic drop seemed a little crazy to me, so then I started really watching it closely. Now, the one area to be careful with Roku is that it had profits of $100.9 million last year, and their overall after operating profits, after all their operating expenses were paid, they showed a loss of 10.7 million. So they were not profitable, and that is a red flag. However, they just keep positioning themselves as the primary player for streaming media. And one thing that they've done that I think is super creative is that they've established themselves as a neutral provider of streaming services. So they don't have any plans to come out and provide their own streaming media to produce their own shows or own movies. So they've gained the trust of a lot of different streaming providers because they've said, hey, come to our platform, bring your services to us, we're a neutral ground, and we'll just allow subscribers to sign up and stream. So it's another outlet for all the players who are producing television shows, movies, and other media. Now, in addition to that, 1 in every 3 televisions sold in the United States is a Roku-ready TV, which is a staggering number. That's 33% of all televisions. Now, they aren't paired with some of the bigger brands like the Samsungs and the Vizios. I think TCL was the primary provider or the highest quality provider of Roku-ready TVs, but the sales have been really good, and 1 in 3 is a big number. Now, because they showed a loss and they were not profitable last year, they don't have a PE ratio currently that's relevant, so that's another area that makes me a little uneasy when looking at a stock. So I'm watching it closely right now, and I plan to provide more content moving forward on this and any action that I'm taking on Roku. Now, these are all my opinions, so just take them with a grain of salt. I'm not giving anyone an indication to buy anything or sell anything. This is simply just my opinion on my take on Roku and my plans for Roku moving forward. Final piece of information to mention about Roku is that they did come out with the Roku Express, which is 10% smaller than the normal Roku device and slightly cheaper than their previous model. So that could give a boost to their sales and maybe bring in a new subset of customers who are just looking to not pay as much for their premium service. So with that, why don't we jump into the charts? All right, I've got the Roku chart up here on the daily time frame, and I want to just show you what it's done recently over the past year, and then we'll dive into what it's been doing more recently in the last few days. But I'm just going to kind of zoom into a window here, and you can see that Roku, as of the end of last year, sort of bottomed at the 2473 level and then has just been on a tear. It keeps bouncing, and it seems to really be bouncing off this 50 simple moving average, which is the red line. It'll come back to it and bounce, back to it and bounce, and then recently it just had a ridiculous move up. So it had this huge sell-off, and let's zoom in a little bit closer. We had this big sell-off here, and we had some announcement of the Apple TV coming in. It dropped really hard, and then it started to stabilize right along this 20 simple moving average. So that was encouraging, possibly to continue higher, or maybe even just sideways for a little bit before it went higher. But then Comcast came out with the television, with their streaming service, the Xfinity Flex. They got another big drop, and then I started really watching it right in here when it was touching off the 50. And then right after that, we got another huge drop, and this seemed to be more drama related. So very interesting what's been happening more recently with Roku. But now you can see this morning, it's still pretty early in the trading day. We're hovering right around the 110 mark. I'm sort of expecting a little bit of a bounce up. The reason that I think this candle happened was everybody was watching this gap, and I drew these two arrows right here to sort of point those out. You can see right here it gapped up after the earnings. So they were anticipating losing about 16.7 cents at earnings, and instead they only lost 8 cents. So it was a nice upbeat surprise, and they got a nice gap up. But anytime we have those gaps, those can act as vacuums where it can suck price action up or down. And that's exactly what happened here. It stayed above, stayed above, stayed above, and then the minute it hit this open price of 118.70 right in there, it just sucked it right back down. And here is sort of the top of that gap, and you can see this candle or this wick, the high right here was about 111.79, and then the low on this day was 103.62. So we really closed that gap out, and then today we gapped up just a tiny bit, and now we've been pushing to the upside just a hair. So we'll see what happens. I'm anticipating that it'll stabilize at the bottom of this gap and then make its decision as to whether or not it's going to start to work its way back up, or if it'll drift a little lower and maybe end up down near the 200 simple moving average. But we'll see what happens in the next few days, and I'm going to update you guys as we go along. I'm just going to keep watching this stock, and you can see we've had a nice uptrending position here. We've had the 200 simple moving average moving up, so that's a great sign. We've had a big dramatic pullback that I don't think is fully related to fundamental breakdowns within the company. So having other companies introduce streaming services that are in competition with Roku, yes, that can have an effect, but this just seemed like a very over-exaggerated downside move, and it's just huge. It's almost 36%. So we'll really watch this closely for a bounce back to the upside. The other thing I'm watching that I like, and we talked about this a while back, was the MACD has pushed down and is really stretched to the downside. And as we talked before, we like to see a stretch to the downside because we know that that means that there could be some reversion coming, and it'll revert back to the mean more than likely. It doesn't have to, but typically it does. And I'm hoping that that reversion will indicate or move into a little upside movement and establish a base of support that it can play off of, and then we can possibly move higher. So we'll be watching that really closely over the next few days. I'll keep updating you guys. If you're in Roku now, comment below, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll see you tomorrow.